Welcome to the Rabbi's Message. This is Rabbi Elazar Bogomilsky. Every single week, we try to bring a unique and important message for the next 30 minutes on something connected to this week's Torah portion. This week's Torah portion that will be read in synagogues throughout the world is called Parshat Eikev. Eikev is a unique Torah portion. This is part of the period when Moses stands before the Jewish people on his last 37 days of life, so to speak, knowing that he will not enter the promised land, the land of Israel. He stands before the Jewish people, and he once again reiterates, gives them direction, inspiration, rebukes to some degree, and hopefully gives them tremendous guidance of how to live their life and how they will live the life in the land of Israel. A big portion of the discussion is based on what they've gone through, reminding them the challenges, the obstacles, the miracles, the greatness and the dedication that God showed every step of the way. How when things came before the Jewish nation, nations rose up and said, "We will challenge you. We will challenge your survival. We would challenge your existence. We would challenge your future." And each and every time, the Jewish people were able to stand strong with their faith and thankfully prevail with the unique connection under the leadership and guidance of Moses. So each one of these Torah portions in the final book of Moses, this one known as the third Parsha, in the book of Devarim, of Deuteronomy, it's called Eikev. And there's a couple of things that bring to mind when we read this week's Torah portion. First of all, I want to talk about the unique name of the Torah portion. Secondly, there's a couple of interesting verses that I think if we analyze it and we learn an interesting perspective, and perhaps a wow that can relate to our day in and day out life. And third, there is a passage in this week's Torah portion that really gives tremendous hope and validity to our day in and day out actions of how we live our life. So that's what we're going to try to cover over the next 30 minutes. First of all, what's the name of this week's Torah portion? It's called Eikev. Eikev literally comes from the word heal. And we translated in this week's Torah portion almost as a translation of V'haya Eikev Tishmeun, that'll be when, translated as when the Jewish people will observe and listen to the laws and the statutes of God, and they will observe everything that He tells them to do, and they will pay attention to the Almighty God. God will send forth His covenant and His kindness, which He has sworn to our forefathers. And it goes on verse after verse, explaining the unique blessings and the importance that the Jewish people will be granted if they follow in the way of God. First of all, why do we use this terminology of Eikev? What's the expression? What's the unique teachings of this word Eikev? When? One of the great commentaries, 11th century scholar known as Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, the acronym known as Rashi, the great scholar and sage Rashi, says as follows: V'haya Eikev Tishmeun, and it will be when we observe in God's commandments. He explains as follows: Im hamitzvos kalos she'adam dosh be'ikvav tishmun. If a person observes the commandments that literally we thresh over, and we step on them, and we sort of make light of these commandments, hence the word Eikev. And I'm really sharing with you this thought because I know so many people that grab a Bible, grab the Torah, and look up the English translation or any other language it's translated into. And they say, V'haya Eikev, and it will be when. But when you look at the root of the Hebrew word, the significance of what the Hebrew word of Eikev really means, Eikev comes from the word heel. If you remember back all the way in the first book, the book of Genesis, when it talks about the birth of Jacob, and it says, why was Jacob called Jacob? The reason is because he held on to the heel of Esau. Remember the story with Rebekah when she gave birth to twins, and Esau was the first one to come out of his mother's womb, and that right away the verse says that Eikev, Yaakov, was the one that held on to the heel of his older brother twin, Esau. So the word Eikev comes from the same root of the word as heel. What's the significance? So Rashi tells us, this great scholar, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, something so simple, but so deep and profound. He tells us as follows. You know, so many of us go through life, and we make that board of success, and we sort of throw those darts on where we want to be. And we point out to ourselves, this is a big commandment. This is a big deed. And if I do this big deed, that's when I'll be noticed. And for that great deed that I will do, God will grant me all the things that I need in my life. That if a person actually goes ahead and follows these commandments, what will happen is that each and every step of the person's life will be totally connected to divinity and spirituality. Wow, what a misunderstanding, a miscomprehension of this unique verse. The verse tells us and teaches us something way more unique and important perspective to the human being. And it's all wrapped up and enveloped in the word Eikev. Eikev means heel, as Rashi explains. It's those small little commandments. It's that little gesture that your wife turns to you and says, honey, would you please help me with this? It's a little neighbor that asks you, please do me this favor. It's that person that tells you, please give me a dime, a dollar, I need some help. And you say, I just gave away $100. I just gave away $1,000. I just wrote a check for $1 million. I can't write you a check for 1,000. You're the small potatoes. That's not the important element of charity. I've done my charity for today. How many people think that or actually act on that perspective? And the answer is, unfortunately, many. And it's not your fault. And it's not our fault. Because the human being thinks of, wait a second. We put everything on a scale and we say these are the big ones and these are the small ones. The big ones are the things that I will be challenged with. And therefore, when I overcome that challenge, what a smile God will have on his face. What a joy God will say, shh, this person went out of their way to do that great big deed. Comes this week's Torah portion, the opening verse, and says, wait a second. You got it all wrong. Life is not about doing the complicated, challenging, difficult obstacles, things that you have to jump and sway and swing, and you have to be totally fit in order to accomplish these commandments. But even if it's just an Eikev, even if it's just a heel of the human being, even if it's just something that sort of slips, nobody notices, no one will even grant you satisfaction. No one will pat you on your shoulder and say, wow, look what you have done. Look at that kindness. Look at that deed. Look at that spiritual connection you have made. Nobody will even know. That is the commandments that we're talking about. That is the commandments where all these great rewards will follow. Because the human being is not about being noticed. Yes, it motivates the person. I always tell people, If you're going to give and it will inspire other people to give as well, let people know about it. Because some people need that push. And that's why we read about in our papers, and we read about great philanthropists that have changed the veneer. Right here we have it in Seattle. What Bill Gates has done is off the charts, amazing kindness and goodness. He's changed, and he's trying to change not only what he thinks is right and how to save certain diseases in this world, but ultimately he has inspired a generation of big, deep pockets to be great givers. But what happens is there are many, many individuals that say, if I only had what Bill Gates had, I would do the same. My answer is, wait a second. This week's Torah portion tells us it's the Eikev. It could be that 50 cents out of your pockets. It could be that penny out of your pocket. It could be that dollar, that $100, that small amount that really is also equally, and I underline the word equally, as important. I always tell people, if you're going to give charity, make it a daily action. Don't make it a yearly action. Be involved in doing goodness and kindness. When I say charity, it doesn't only mean money out of your pocket. In Hebrew, the word tzedakah, which we translate loosely as charity, really comes from the same root of the word of tzedek, which means righteousness and justice. Because we believe when a person does the acts of charity, or any form of righteous act, or any form of just in this world, you are making this world a way more meaningful and spiritual plateau that God could reside in. So when we analyze the beginning of this Torah portion, I want people to be empowered. I want us to walk away and say, wait a second. Until now, until this moment, I never realized the power I have. Until this moment, I never realized the unique perspective to the human being. I never realized what I can truly comprehend and what I can truly accomplish. You're telling me that small little act, by me doing that act, I am going to be rewarded with all the blessings that Moses tells us that God promises the Jewish people and the world at large? The answer is yes. Of course, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about these small little deeds. I want to move for a second to another interesting dialogue and discussion in this week's Torah portion. You know, the verse says something very, very interesting. There's sort of a default button in the human being. And the default button is that when a person wakes up or thinks of a business plan or thinks of a physical business or starts out with a little push cart and eventually becomes a large department store, starts out in their basement selling a little software and eventually becomes a Fortune 500 company, starts out with who knows what, a little cleaning service, and eventually becomes a chain of all these, starts out selling one burger and eventually becomes a McDonald's. Who cares? Whatever it is, the point is that when we develop something, when the human being works on something, or talk about the idea of education, medical breakthroughs, so many times it's so clear to the human being that I have spent that quality time. I have put in over 10, 15 years of research. I'll never forget, a person told me, I have worked 7 days a week for 10 years straight, and that's why my business was successful. And so many times I hear this over and over again. Rabbi, I developed it. Rabbi, I built this up. Rabbi, it was my hard dedication and focus, and now this person wants to take it away from me. It was all my idea. I can't believe that my idea now is going to be sold for X amount of dollars. It's worth way more than that. Again, these are all good complaints. But I want to share with you perhaps a verse that's founded in this week's Torah portion that I almost feel it should be a bumper sticker. how we relate to life, and how we relate to understanding ourselves. And the verse goes as follows, that if a person says in your heart, and a person says that it was my strength, and it was my ability, and my power of my hand that has made me into this great soldier, so to speak, right away the verse says, remember the Almighty God. Why? Why does the verse lead into this verse right away? And this important idea, because Ki hu hanosein lecha koach. God is the one, the Almighty God is the one that gives you the strength and the ability to be this great warrior, this soldier. In order you should be able to create and establish this covenant which He has promised you till this day. You know, people read this verse, they stumble across the verse, they glaze at the verse, and they say, you know, a simple gazing at the verse, interesting verse, and move on. I think this verse is not only important, but I think this gives us an entire new perspective of how when you look at the challenges and the joys of life, and you look at things and you say it's not fair, or you look at it and you say, wow, you stand on top of the mountain and you say, I created this mogul. It's all mine. I am the master. I am the owner of this mountain. I really believe this bumper sticker, so to speak, should be embedded and ingrained in every single person. From the moment you wake up in the morning till the moment you close your eyes, a person should begin to realize that all the success, all the hard work, all the ability to be what you are today. And you should be proud what you have developed. You should be proud of what became of yourself. But I think what's important is the person has to realize that every step of the way was only and is only the way it is because, as the verse says, remember that God is the one who hanosein lecha koach la'asot chayil. He is the one that gives you the power and the strength to be this great soldier. You can't be a soldier if no one provides you the uniform. You can't be a soldier if no one gives you the food. You can't be a soldier if no one tells you this is the army you are actually fighting for. If you are just one single person running out in the world and you say, I am a soldier for the U.S. Army, I am a Navy, I am a SEAL, whatever it may be, and you say to yourself, I have done it all, people will probably look at you and say, what is wrong with this human being? He has actually zero, or she has zero affiliation to any true sense of the world, of the word, of what it means to be a soldier. And so to it, when we relate this concept to our day in and day out life, and we think about this uniqueness, and we say, wait a second, I am today who I am because I have worked hard, but it's only because I have been granted that ability to achieve. Because I could assure you, and you speak to any truly open-minded, successful person, may it be in the medical field, may it be in the business world, may it be in the world of education, it doesn't make a difference. In any field, when you come across a person that is really open-minded and developed, they will truly say, you know something, I have no idea why I am more successful than my colleagues. I have no idea there are other people that work just as hard or even harder, and they couldn't make two nickels rub together. Every time they had a business, it fell apart. Yes, you can sort of look back, and there are a lot of books that analyze the uniqueness and the perspectives and the why, and you can follow these principles, and he was able to follow those principles. Trust me, if you are truly honest with yourself, you will believe that it wasn't just because you've done those things, because I could assure you, you can find that same model in not 1, 2, but over 100 or 1,000 people that will in the world that will follow that same model and won't be as successful? And the answer is because, again, back to the verse, chapter 8, verse 18 says, remember that is God the one that actually gives you the strength and the ability to be who you are. So our mission and our purpose is to work. Our direction is clear. The ingredients are laid out there. Yes, you can achieve and you can become whatever you want. But a person has to also know the second part, and that is the acknowledgement of the greatness of God. We're going to take a short break now. When we come back, I am going to share with you another interesting insight of this week's Torah portion, Parshat Eikev. Again, you're listening to the Rabbi's message, and we'll be back right after these messages.
Join the Friendship Circle, a project of the High Center of Greater Seattle. That's a nonprofit organization. The Friendship Circle is made up of 5 parts: volunteers, children, parents, staff, and supporters. The true beauty of the circle is how we all link together to form a seamless circle of friendship. Through our Friends at Home program, we match teens with special needs children for the mutual benefit of both. The teens pay a weekly visit to the home of a special child where they offer friendship, recreational interaction, arts and crafts, homework support, life skill enhancement, and more. It bolsters brotherhood and promotes volunteerism by youth as well as adults. If you know a teen that would like to volunteer, please give us a call at 206-525-5011 or visit us on the web at friendshipcirclewa.com and learn more about how you can participate. The Friendship Circle and you. Together, we can perform miracles.
Good news, Belgium. We're streamed worldwide at 1150kknw.com. Alternative Talk, 1150 AM.
Welcome back to the Rabbi's Message. Again, my name is Rabbi Elazar Bogomilsky, and we're talking about this week's Torah portion, Parshat Eikev, which has so many unique lessons and perspectives, and a way that we can connect with understanding our purpose and our mission in this world. One of the things that I want to share with you towards the end of this week's Torah portion is the passage, the holy passage of the great prayer known as Shema. Shema is the prayer when we turn to the Almighty God and we say, "Hear, O Israel, God our God, God is one." And the first passage primarily is the passage that talks about the love of God and the fear of God with our heart, with our soul, which we read in the past. In this week's Torah portion, we sort of tap into the second paragraph, the second large paragraph that talks about the uniqueness of one that observes God's commandments. And a couple of things I want to talk about. First of all, in this great prayer Shema, when we stand before the Almighty God, and literally as the great scholars and sages discuss this matter, and they say that every time a person says that Shema, we place our right hand over our eyes, and we close our eyes with tremendous meditation and thought, and we have a clear understanding that we as individuals are ready to do anything to help us connect with our Almighty God. In fact, going back 60 years ago, in the time of the Holocaust, you have story after story after story and throughout history of Jews that have been standing sort of on their last stage, their last step of life, the last breath that they were given on this physical world. And the last words they would utter was the great words of Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel. We know going back in history close to 2,000 years ago, the great scholar and sage Rabbi Akiva, who started his surge and started his yearning and connection in the teachings of Torah at the age of 40, and eventually became, as we discussed in the past on our program, eventually has become one of the greatest Jewish leaders and scholars in Jewish history. with over 24,000 disciples, until his final day of life, when he stood before the Romans, and the Romans literally put him to death. The final words on his lips that were uttered was the passage of Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, God our God, God is one. And based on that key foundation, that every single Jew understands he or her's perspective, and understands their mission and why you are put into this world, we come across the second passage, which gives us sort of a twofold perspective. If you do good, there will be rain in the proper time, and crop in the proper time, and everything, the fields will be proper, your wealth will be proper. Everything you want in life, God will grant you. And then all of a sudden, the passage takes a curve and a turn to just the opposite. Hishamru lechem, be careful, that verse says. Because if your heart begins to yearn after things that are not spiritual, and you go in sort of in the path that is not divine, then all the things that you work and you label and you toil and you think you're making a difference, I call it the Flintstone motion. You kick your legs and you spin your wheels, but you go absolutely nowhere. And unfortunately, we see many people in life. And again, our job is not to judge and to say the reason why you're having this challenge is because of so. But there is clearly something that when you read these verses and you read these passages and you say to yourself, wow, there's something important. There's something unique. There's a way for me to connect, and I can understand what's so spiritual about this. I think this week's Torah portion should be a tremendous eye-opener, that may it begin from the name of the Torah portion called Eikev, that even the small perspectives, to understanding that everything we do in life is not us, but everything we do in life is from God. Then everything we do in our day in and day out life, God will grant us the blessings, the wishes, and all the things that we want and we deserve in our life. And we should all be blessed with a very joyous and happy week. You're listening again to the Rabbi's Message, Rabbi Elazar Bogomilsky, every single Tuesday right here on 1150 AM KKNW.